Welcome to the Sports Mechanics channel. Watch here and that.
If we are here today with the firefighters, it's to burn this electric car.
Electric cars and fire is a topic that interests many people. It can be scary to think about. We've already seen on the internet videos where it was burning, etc.
Here we are with Renault, who is presenting us the Fireman Access.
The technology to extinguish battery fires has existed since the first Zoe, where they implemented a system to directly extinguish the fire from the battery.
It's co-developed at the same time with the
Firefighters, they have
Explained to us that there were firefighters who were on mission all year round on the
development of cars.
And so what we're going to see here is the car over there.
He tells us we can get a little closer to this car.
Then we're going to see it completely burned. So here is what it currently looks like.
We will see later what it will look like.
But these are prototype cars, so Renault basically gives about 500 a year, roughly,
To be able to burn them.
So basically, we have a little bit of all the French press, the elite of the French press.
And
Thanks to your subscriptions and likes, I can be here.
look, not many people will be able to discover what will happen with this car.
Firefighters are everywhere and they're going to set it on fire.
This will allow us to know what really happens when it burns and how we're going to put out the fire.
So he was telling us that to extinguish a car, it takes between 30,000 and 40,000 liters of water. And that precisely with this Fireman Access, we could really reduce, in fact, the water consumption and the time above all.
In about 10 minutes, we can extinguish it, consuming only 2,000 to 4,000 liters of water to put out a car fire like that.
In short, I can't wait to see it burn and watch them put it out.
So we can see that this car, it's the 60 kilowatt hour battery. So to give you a rough idea, the larger the battery capacity, the longer it takes to burn.
As the number of cells increases, it takes longer to process.
On these cars at the back now, there are quick response codes. So here we can find it just here, for example, and that's on almost all electric cars.
Now, having a little trouble seeing it. I would have preferred it to be outside, maybe because indeed it can be complicated, for example, just with a little bit of sun. This feature helps firefighters know how to cut the car during an accident, significantly changing things.
Available at the back and also at the front. This is what this car looks like, and watch its habit of burning it. Here, what I want to do is go see this little leather code. We'll see if it works. Open in Chrome.
So I take my picture and there you go. Basically, what we can see directly. There they are going to give us...
Access to the floors in needing, yes, but there the firefighters in fact have access to all, so sorry for...
Come back.
On the other hand, when the vehicle has reached 10 minutes of burning, all the interior elements like plastic foam will have disappeared and pyrolyzed due to the effect of fire, and the firefighters will be able to locate the Fireman Access spot.
So after 10 minutes, we can see the Fireman Access.
Once the bag is off, the battery burns, and so we will proceed in a second.
Time to extinguish the battery.
The steps. It's about 4 minutes for extinguishing a vehicle fire. Finally, 4 minutes to extinguish the cabin. Then about 4 minutes to put out the battery fire. And once the battery is extinguished, the protocol that we have
put in place with
Renault is to let water run for 10 minutes with a slight trickle of water. To drown the battery at heart. So for 10 minutes at the heart of the battery. Okay, so rather interesting. So
We will only see if there is a misaccess from the moment it is already a little bit burned.
and you will therefore see a first lance that will extinguish the cockpit, and a second one that will be dedicated to extinguishing the battery. So, in a second time, and so you will see how we proceed. We are used to doing this since we have about 50 of fire experiences of electric vehicle. During the fire, you are going to assist to different things. So the ignition, how it's going to happen, the ignition, we set it voluntarily. It's not a computerized start.
So, I'm going back to this technical sheet here while we're in this scenic.
Here are the information given to you when you scan this little quick response code.
You can also download and it gives you all the information precisely about your car.
What can we break? Where are the access points, the structures? What can we cut?
And in fact, firefighters are trained, they know a little bit about cars, and now we're going to say that this has become a bit of a standard, but the same, where can we turn off, etc.
It's quite interesting.
Don't hesitate to scan. If you have the quick response code on your car, you will surely learn things.
I'm going to insert the seat to be able to access the foam, and then I'm going to impregnate the foam with a liquid and accelerator.
So now we're going to put a little product that will make it ignite much more quickly.
Don't do this at home.
Normally this should go well.
To start the barbecue, so here, little torch, we start the fire. So I didn't think we could be this close to start the fire.
There, the car is catching fire. It's burning nicely.
We've locked the car and it's starting now. This is the beginning.
And what they were explaining to us is that it took roughly about 20 minutes before it really got out of hand. Now we can observe the phenomenon known as thermal runaway, like this. I will then take you back moment by moment and show you this again, because otherwise it's going to be really, really very long. But it will be interesting to see an electric car burn. Well, here's what it looks like live.
So, it started to burn at 57. It's been 9 minutes now that the car is burning.
And I must admit that it does take some time before it reaches the batteries.
I didn't expect it to take this long before the battery could actually be affected, so limit.
If you have an electric car that catches fire with extinguishers, you can go extinguish what's happening inside quite quickly without being able to access the batteries.
In any case, for the fire, and I think it's still quite interesting rather than letting it really burn to the end there.
It was a fire, so like an accidental fire, for example, that started in the passenger compartment.
It didn't come from the battery, but when it does come from the battery, it's still extremely rare.
14 hours, 57. We just started the fire, so a kind of small Molotov cocktail that fell on a seat, in your opinion. How long before it burns?
The firefighters told us it took about 2 minutes for the time it takes the firefighters to get in the truck.
And leaving the station is often about 10 minutes or so to get to a vehicle directly at the scene of the fire.
Everyone is extremely attentive because it's still very interesting, not something we see every day.
So, I didn't know. But now, the windshield is starting to break little by little, and we can really see that the fire has started at the front.
Before it spreads to the back, it still takes some time.
We can already feel the heat.
Honestly, I'm far away. Look at the distance. It's a small, low background, and I really feel the heat already coming, even though it's only the inside.
You hear the horn going off, so the horn goes off to warn that there is a fire. So, I admit that it's quite long.
And it has already started to burn well before the horn and the warning go off.
In case it's night, if you can't see the fire well enough, there are still the headlights that turn on. It makes calls of
Headlights.
small.
Small. Like that, it still allows to have, in addition to the horn, fire, lights.
Really, something to warn as quickly as possible.
5 minutes, 5 minutes. Currently,
It's starting to zitter.
The airbag that just exploded.
Interesting.
Honestly, the airbags that explode every time when we are nearby.
Side curtain, surely, and we can see that an airbag, it really does smell the heat.
I believe that we are at the end of the horn. There is
still about 1,500 vehicle fires per year. So there, you have a few vehicles, you see that you have very few 10 minutes. That's what it looks like.
The horn is having a little bit of trouble, but
it's coming back.
As we see here, the entire cabin has vanished.
The specificity pertains to accessing the entire vehicle, not just the fireman.
Said that the doors were made of aluminum and that it melted.
And in the end, it was easier to access the fireman access in the car. Well there. However, we are now seeing much darker smoke. In my opinion, we are close to the battery. Still there. So what is quite astonishing is that not all the tires have exploded yet. Quite astonishing.
I suspect the tires won't last long since we can currently see that one side is burning.
However, the sensation of heat is really noticeable.
Impressive, Jay. I missed.
It's going to make big explosions, but it looks like it still hasn't hit the battery, which is quite impressive. And the battery, normally lithium, as soon as it catches fire, it's going to be quite crazy.
The producers of Mayan jacks have modified the jack setbacks and realized this setback in plastic. When these rag jacks were subjected to fire, the plastic setbacks melted and the rag jacks went off like missiles. And it has been a cause of accidents for the trotting firefighters. There have been several firefighters who have been injured by the emissives from the jacks and the platform. And
So the firefighter tapas turned to the Renault manufacturer.
Starts to...
Right, we see that it
Really has the cell rolling on?
the bottom, and we really have the impression of having a...
huge pressure. Look there. It's starting to become really impressive. Is this the moment when it really starts to burn? I don't have the time. We have about 15 minutes before it starts to burn at the battery level. It's also a testimony, a demonstration of a partnership that we've mentioned. Look, I don't know if you see the flames, but it's definitely flames. 100% there are flames.
There they explained that now, as all the tires have burst. In fact, the car is resting on the ground.
And so, in fact, we can no longer have access at all to the battery from underneath. So that's why the fireman access of...
In fact, the interior is much more accessible.
For them.
There are still 10 minutes before they consider it's really the thermal runaway of the battery. But for me, if it has already burned like that, significant damage has been done. However, everything is under control.
The firefighters, there can be explosions, things.
That fall, it's quite impressive. It's impressive. It's both beautiful, but at the terrifying under.
We're almost at 25 minutes, so at this point, we don't recognize the Renault at all.
We can see that he has finished the doors, they are chosen, and it's still on fire.
Normally, we should start to really experience the thermal shock of the battery, the thermal runaway of the battery, as they call it. So, So, we are surely going to take pictures of this part of the fireman axis, which will start to become clearly visible. Normally, since we no longer have any benches and others, so it's going to become quite interesting. I'm not allowed to approach it.
Too bad, because you know me,
I wish I could have been there in the heart of it all, dressed up in a suit. Even after nearly 25 minutes, it still hasn't burned down.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't see any blatant runaway.
So right now, they are actually preparing the lances.
You can see the impression that is gradually forming right here. How...
Is it going to be? I'm not going to rush to take my shower right away. So, here we can see that he's preparing it. Normally there are two lances to have a background distinction, like this.
Hop heavy, 2 firefighters.
And there it screams, so we can approach the fire.
See that in the end? It burns, but it still burns for a very long time, so...
The battery after 30 minutes, only after 30 minutes, it's when...
Even quite huge, However, we can see that here it's starting to heat up well.
That's a shame. They preferred having the whole experience, the big fire and everything, but they are still very close. That's impressive.
There it is. Now it's starting to become go.
Because there they have extinguished all the inside, and there the cells start to burn. But so, 30 minutes before the fire reaches the cells.
It's still quite impressive, so you have to see that they still managed to be quite close.
You have to be careful. They are quite busy. They have masks, etc. Quite impressive. This...
What's crazy is that there are places that are turned off, but it continues to burn.
The real problem is that even if we have turned off the rest of the car, the batteries start after 30 minutes to...
Take a little. And there, it still takes time.
To try to flood the fireman access so as to directly extinguish the fire, which will indeed flood the battery, the goal is to flood the battery.
I don't know if you see at their feet level, there are flames blowing enormously. So now, it is really necessary to be able to extinguish and flood the battery to make sure it goes out.
Honestly.
Brave.
The firefighters to approach so much because it's still quite scary. There is a photographer who is still equipped. I would have loved to be able to be...
As close as that. There.
It starts...
It still seems to fade out quite quickly, it seems, and...
The flames are barely visible now. It seems to me that allows... to extinguish quickly. That
goes out very...
fast. In fact, by accessing the battery through this blow that will directly flood the battery. Impressive.
Don't know.
If you heard correctly, but he was saying that for 10 minutes.
To properly cool the battery, a continuous small stream of water was necessary.
And so the goal was really to cool everything down so that it wouldn't catch fire again and get out of control.
So we wait a little bit, but in the end, the fire spread was still quite fast, and
Producing 1,500 cars annually in the Idines alone is impressive. Afterward, the suits are cleaned.
Perfect. So here we can see the location of their most failed man access, which is here.
So I zoom as much as I can. We're not allowed to get too close, as if I'm still quite curious.
So now we need to repeat this for about 10 minutes.
so we can see that there are still parts that are very, very hot. The metal stays hot for a long time. So this is the same.
When we weld something or other, we have to be super careful because, in fact, the materials stay very, very hot for a very long time.
So 10 minutes like this. Well, and now it's placed on the ground. It almost looks like a train car, so... There you go.
The car burned well. We can see what's there. It's quite impressive.
We will do a little tour of the box with all the colleagues, a little bit everywhere. We will do well.
Go see this famous Fireman access. Now we can go around.
So it's quite impressive as well. When we see this, look at the tires. We can see all the metal that's in the tires. So here it's well burned. In any case, the steel rims, very, very good quality at Renault.
We can clearly see all the body reinforcements and the metal bodywork. We can see that the doors, they have completely melted. There's really nothing left, so it was aluminum. And we will go precisely to see this fireman.
Access.
Who is the hole? Who is the hole that is right there? We're going to try to get a little closer. Who
is there? Where it's smoking right there, there is...
After the battery box turned at 19 degrees 19 degrees, they cooled everything down well.
It's rather not bad. There's nothing left. Everything has melted, really melted, right here.
In short, so if you
liked it, this video, the little blue thumb like that, it was still very interesting. Thanks to Renault for inviting me to
be able to discover
a car fire with the
firefighters here in Yvelines.
We were in Montigny-Bretonneux, the training center that is in direct collaboration with Renault. It was super
interesting.